You're looking live at downtown Phoenix in the PHNX studios in the lovely GOAT studio. I'm your host, Greg Esposito. Lindsay is sitting to my left, but has the afternoon off. We're joined by special guest Vince Marotta for a Valley Voices episode here. We'll also have Sam Cooper from the Timeline and Kevin Rabe, play-by-play man for your Phoenix Suns. But I am joined by my partner in crime, as always, Gerald Bourget. Gerald, how are you, man?
I'm good. I'm excited. We just finally got to go to Suns practice again, and so now it feels like the playoffs are actually here for me, so I'm excited.
Vince, how you been, man? It's been a while since you and I have sat down and talked on mic. You doing well?
It has been a while.
It has.
Especially on mic.
Yeah.
I gotta go way back into the archives.
Okay.
But
Right,
my history with Espo goes way back to, did you know this?
I don't think
He was a high school football stringer on a scoreboard show we did. He was like 16 years old.
Yep.
Calling in from high schools that were conveniently located near your house in the East Valley.
Yes,
because you didn't have a lot of transportation options.
You were the reason I got my first cell phone, was because that was how I could convince my parents to give me a cell phone. Was I'm working and I need to call in, thus I need a cell phone.
And their follow-up was, how much are you making in this job?
Yes. And it was nothing.
Yeah,
that has continued in media for a very long time for me as well. So, yeah, well, our paths have crossed multiple times in this business, but glad to finally have you here on the show. And look, we're going to get into plenty of the Suns Clippers stuff, but we want to start by asking you a little bit about what you're doing. Obviously, you're over at 98.7 on morning, Bickley and Marotta mornings. Love the show. You're also the PA announcer for the Suns. And I want to know, what was it like the very first time you got to announce Kevin Durant as a Phoenix Sun? That had to be a very cool moment. And interesting that you guys went with KD as the first guy.
Yeah. First, the feeling was, okay, this is finally happening, because I was all ready to do it. I made the rounds. I was doing interviews. I was doing social media stuff for the Suns content team about, hey, how are you going to announce it? Didn't get to do it that night because of the ankle. So it was mostly just a sense of relief. And I'm not a superstitious person, but at that point I'm like, I'm not practicing. I'm not doing any dry runs. I don't want to be considered a jinx. So let's just get to it. And you know, my kids were at that game, and when I texted them, when the lineup sheet came out and you see Kevin Durant on the inactive list, my first, I got to text my kids. They're like, why are you messing with us, Dad? Why are you doing this?
I'm not. I promise.
And then I wonder, too, it's like how many people in the arena didn't know that he wasn't playing and are thinking, why are they starting Josh Okogie and Torrey Craig? Are they starting 6 players tonight? Like, why is this happening? So it was a cool experience. Definitely. It's always a cool experience, but a little extra special that night.
We were live on air, and Gerald had messaged us, when we saw the tweets, we're like, what? This is a cruel joke, right? And then you see the video, and it was pretty gruesome. So.
Yeah, that's one of those updates you get. Like, I can't remember how soon it was before tip off, but it was like within that last half hour, 45 minutes or so.
I think it was about 15 minutes.
Yeah. And it was like you had to do a double take because you're like, is this real?
Yeah.
Are we actually doing this?
When you get into, do you go talk to KD beforehand? Like, do you introduce yourself? No, it's not. Hey, any preferences you have?
You know me. I'm a go in, do my job, stay out of the way guy.
That's true.
And if anybody talks to me, I'll talk to them. Like I don't want to be that guy.
That's true.
Yeah.
Well, one of the cool things you got to do as a PA announcer is you were part of the NBA 2K series. They let the PA announcers kind of call these things. What was that experience like, and what was it like for you to see yourself in a game? Well, I guess you don't see yourself, but hear yourself.
No. It was an amazing experience. I had heard around the pandemic, I had heard rumors that they were going to do it, and then you think, you know, what an undertaking that would be for 2K to do, but their goal is realism, so they want to add that aspect to it. So we first did it in. I flew out to LA to the studios where they record all of it for about 4 or 5 days in 2021, and it was just an immense amount of work. You're just name after name, circumstance after circumstance, and then did it again for the 23 version. And then I was just there again in January for a couple of days. So every time you go, it's a little less, but they keep adding, aspects to the PA thing. I haven't played the 23 one yet, so I don't know what it sounds like. It's a little weird,
Yeah.
but it's cool when people come up and say, is that you in the 2K game? Yeah, it is. It's
you and Devin Booker making your 2K debuts this year. It's great.
Yeah.
Are you going to get a cover too? Is that
That's
next
not
the PA
going to
announcer
happen.
cover?
But the first year they did it, when they rolled it out for the 22 edition, they wanted to keep it completely secret. So I had flown out there and done all the recording in, I think it was March. And couldn't talk about it until September when the game came out. And, and finally they started to release all these like teaser videos, and they had teaser videos for all the PA announcers. It was really, they gave us first class treatment. It's a really, really cool game and a great company.
Oh, that's awesome. I mean, I'm not a big 2K person, but because Book's on the cover and because now we know Vince is in the game, like, gonna have to check it out at some point in the near future.
We saw
Let me know how I sound.
we saw the B-roll. Could they have given you a bigger mic
For real though?
to wear?
That thing's massive.
Speak softly and carry a big mic.
It is. It's a weird process though, because you're sitting in a room and you're trying to capture all of this energy, where you're not getting that energy return from 17,000 people in the stadium. So it's a little weird. Yeah.
Before we welcome our next guest, Sam Cooper from the Timeline, I want to tell you about our friends over at Four Peaks. We got plenty going on with them, and they've got the best beers in the Valley. I can't say enough about how much I enjoy them. Gerald, what's your favorite beer over there at Four Peaks?
Mine is definitely the Suns Brew. Like, the can is phenomenal, but I've been drinking that long before they rolled out the Suns can, like all the way back into college when I first would be able to, when I was old enough to go to Four Peaks. That was my go-to.
Good cover.
Yeah, when I was old enough. But I love Kilt Lifter, love the Wow Wheat. I actually had never tried that until we kind of partnered with them. So those are probably my top three.
Their Tea Party one that they just came out with, it's got green tea in it. One of my favorites now. And if you want to try that out, you can do that at our NFL draft party. The Cardinals guys, Johnny and Bo, will be out there on day one of the NFL draft. They have everything for you on April 27th at Four Peak, their A Street pub. You can register for free at the link in our show notes. Recommend that you do that and take advantage of their beer specials. They're going to be $3 Redbird Lager pints, $5 Redbird Lager pitchers. And if you use that PHNX, you tell them you're a diehard, you're going to special of a $3 Kilt Lifter or Wow pint as well. Must be 21 years or older to enjoy responsibly. And our friends over at Game Time, one of our sponsors here, taking care of you if you're a procrastinator for tickets. Now, Vince, you don't have to worry about this. You've got your courtside seat. But for some of the other people out there, ourselves included, getting tickets is going to be difficult in the playoffs. We know that. But if you want the best prices that you can get, up to 60% off, you can go to gametime.co, use that code PHNX, and you're going to get $20 off the first time you go there and use the code. So we looked at it the other day. Game one tickets were $79. You can get in the upper level with that $20 off. It's going to be $59. Go check it out. Get in there. And if you're a procrastinator, you can wait till Sunday and maybe get really, really good deals as well. That's gametime.co. Use that promo code PHNX. And don't forget to do that. You're not going to have any stress when it comes to getting tickets. Terms do apply. Again, create an account, redeem the code PHNX for $20 off your first time, and download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed. So excited to welcome our next guest. But before we do that, we got a super chat from Submerged Sun fan, $10 super chat. Says, hey crew, been busy diving at Lake Pleasant, teaching, glad to be above water for some real basketball. Hey, random thought, Gerald, how would you feel about an Ayton Cat swap? Not going to happen, but still.
Oh man,
we're back here.
It's a loaded question on the Sun show. Look, if they did something like that, obviously the Suns would have to include something else, because for the Timberwolves, that's not enough value for Cat, I think. But offensively, that could be the makings of one of the greatest offenses we've ever seen in NBA history. Defensively, I hesitate a little bit more. There's a reason they went out and got Rudy Gobert. They wanted to put a rim protector center next to him. So I think the defense would take a step back, but it's not going to happen. You're right.
That's worked real well. Maybe DA and a really good PA announcer for Cat.
Oh, that's rough, man.
We want
Minnesota.
Yeah, we're not going to send you to Minnesota. Let's welcome our next panelist on the Valley Voices. It's Sam Cooper from the Timeline. Sam, thanks for taking a few minutes with us.
Thank you for inviting me, guys. I'm excited to be here.
Yes, this is like a crossover event. And for the 4 BoJack Horseman fans in our chat, they'll understand that. But Sam, let's get right down to it. I'm curious what your thoughts are about this Clippers matchup. Obviously, for a lot of people on Suns fandom, Twitter, media, etc., this was the coveted matchup. Now that it's here, how are you viewing this?
Yeah, I feel pretty good. We just recorded our preview podcast and released it a couple of hours ago, as a matter of fact. So I see no reasons to feel particular worry right now. If I were a Suns fan, I think they can give us a hard series for sure. But for a number of basketball reasons that we got into, it's looking pretty good here. And I think this was definitely the preferred matchup over the Warriors and even over the Lakers as well, which I know you guys had spoken about previously.
Vince, how are you feeling about this matchup going in?
The uncertainty of all of it from the Suns standpoint is, everybody keeps talking about, hey, they're undefeated with Kevin Durant. That's irrefutable. You can't argue that they're 8-0, but it's only 8 games. We've never seen, I don't think, for a real legitimate NBA title contender, we've never seen a player even close to the quality of Kevin Durant have that small of a sample size going into the playoffs. So there's a good level of anxiety involved. It's playoff time. There's anxiety anyway, but. The Clippers, they're not complete right now. The Paul George mystery is still out there. I think he could be a huge factor if he's ready to come back at any point. And we saw this 2 years ago. The teams looked a lot different, and the Clippers gave the Suns everything they could handle for the Western Conference Finals. So I'm going in with a healthy dose of respect for the Clippers, but ultimately pretty confident that the Suns will advance.
Yeah, I think Clyde Drexler, we had looked at it. I think Clyde Drexler's the closest in terms of stature to be traded, but he had, I think it was 30-plus games.
30-plus, yeah.
To really navigate this. So I think that's definitely – I said this on Twitter, and I don't know if you guys agree, but to me, this does not feel like this is the year where all the pressure's on this Suns team. I think that's next year. I think you win it this year – everybody's very impressed that you pulled it together in such a short period of time.
Not only that, but impressed, but that healthy feeling of, they did it this year with this team when there's going to be reinforcements to the roster in the offseason too.
Absolutely. Looking at this series, one of my favorite things to do is look at, the keys to the series or X factors, if you will. There are a lot of them in this series, but Sam, I'll start with you. What is kind of your biggest X factor when you look at this matchup, when you look at the fifth guy? There's so many, like whether Russell Westbrook will be playable. There's so many, but if you had to pick,
there are so many. There are so many potential X factors here. Look, everyone's talking about Kawhi versus KD, and with good reason. One guy I'm focusing in on for this series actually is Chris Paul, because I think a lot of people have talked about it. Chris Paul had a strong finish to the season. He averaged just under 16 points per game, shot 45% from deep over his last 10 games. He's carrying some positive momentum here. And he's made the point recently as he's talked to guys like you, Gerald, that he's being guarded by point guards now. He's not taking the strongest defenders on the opposite teams anymore. His matchup in this series we're anticipating to be Russell Westbrook. And I think that's a good matchup for Chris Paul, frankly, with what he can do on the offensive end. Not that he can blow by him with his speed or athleticism at the age of 38, but I think he can work him into multiple actions and really pick on his screen navigation, maybe his team defensive principles a little bit. And they could maybe get him in some trouble. So, I think KD's going to score his. I think Book's going to get his. But in terms of X factors, I'm looking at Chris Paul here for potentially a really strong series. And if he can have that, I think the Suns are basically more or less unbeatable.
Yeah, that's a tough one for the Clippers because Russ, I think, is averaging the 3rd most minutes on their roster right now, which he's been great for them so far. And even I've talked to a couple of Clippers people and they've said defensively, he's been very solid to this point. But the playoffs are a different animal when you've got Monty Williams trying to turn people into pigeons. And between Russ, between Norman Powell, they've got a lot of guys out there that maybe defensively won't hold up if you run a bunch of actions at them. Vince, what about you? What are you looking at in this series? Like, okay, this is where the Suns can have an advantage, or this is something they need to worry about.
Well, I'm going to piggyback on what Sam said. The Chris Paul factor is a big one. And considering, well, first, I mean, that Sunday afternoon game when they played in Oklahoma City, Chris went on the post-game show on television and said, I'm mad at myself for passing up open threes.
Yeah.
And he made it a concerted effort after that to really just catch and shoot, and he's shot at a high percentage. So he's definitely one of them. And I also want to add in there, during the regular season stint with Kevin Durant on the floor, we didn't see a ton of minutes with the big four on the floor. That's going to change in the playoffs. You're going to have less bench minutes. You're going to see more of Chris Paul playing with Kevin Durant, Devin Booker, and that foursome playing together. So I think the opportunity will be there for Chris. And for, another X factor, to me, it's kind of the Josh Okogie, Torrey Craig combo.
Yeah.
I'm pretty confident in what Torrey's going to bring you more offensively. I know what Josh Okogie brings night in, night out defensively, from an offensive rebounding standpoint, crashing the glass. And, the shot's going to be there some nights, and some nights it's not. So I think if those guys can consistently hit shots, and I don't think they're going to get a ton of opportunity, that'll make things a lot easier for the Suns.
Do you guys think that Chris Paul has played a little possum this year, kind of took his foot off the gas a little bit, knowing, hey, I'm not going to actually load manage, but I'm going to take it a little easier and not try to take over as much?
That's such a good point. Like, if there's a player in the NBA that probably heard all the chatter about Chris Paul being done, he's washed, he's hit the wall, he's finished, it's Chris Paul.
Yes.
And he probably was taking notes on all of that stuff. And if there's a player that could do it or would do it, it's probably him. And I hope that's the case, because he has the last month, he's looked like a different player.
Yeah. And it's remarkable because he had to make one of the biggest adjustments on the team as far as spending more time off the ball. And what has he done? He's turned in a season where I think he shot a career high. It's like 55% on catch and shoot threes, which, for a guy at 37, like, it takes some effort to hoist those shots up now if you watch his form. But he's been really good on that front. And Sam, I think you said it well as far as his mental adjustment and the way that he's gone about this. He was saying, like we asked him, does it get annoying when your teammates tell you to shoot the ball? And he's like, could be worse. They could tell me not to shoot the ball. So,
Very true.
But Sam, heading into this matchup, I think most of us in Phoenix feel pretty good about this series. But if you had a biggest concern, aside from Paul George coming back, because I think that's an obvious one, where do you feel like the Clippers might be able to make this a more competitive series?
I do still have some concerns about, just to echo back to the fifth guy problem that Phoenix has. Josh Okogie, what's happening if he's not hitting those shots? He needs to continue to be aggressive, as Vince said, offensive glass. I think Josh is a guy who can attack the paint as well. He'll take that space if you give it to him, so he'll be aggressive. He'll try and go paint to great, as Monty would say, and generate better shots for the offense. But if he doesn't have it, they're going to need to pivot fast. And whether that becomes Terrence Ross or Landry Shamet for spacing, or if it's just Torrey Craig, who gives you a little bit more of the both sides 3-and-D pop, it could be an issue for the Suns potentially. And I also wonder if the Clippers are going to enter this series guarding Josh Okogie at all. Or if maybe they're going to be so focused on Kevin Durant. Really, we haven't seen enough minutes with Kevin Durant to know exactly what his gravity is going to look like at this point. Is he going to draw so many doubles? And Batum, credit to Batum, credit to Kawhi, neither of those guys is probably good enough to take him in single coverage. So are they just going to kind of pull another guy off of Okogie permanently and throw all of that attention at Durant or Booker or whatnot?
It's an interesting question, because Okogie, I think since the start of February, is shooting like 43% on what NBA.com calls wide open threes. But, look at his shot performance over the last month or so. It's been kind of spotty. And they've tried to circumvent that by, having him initiate offense, by using him as a screener, like Sam said, as far as him getting downhill and trying to get to the free throw line. He has that slow motion Euro step where he's just looking to draw contact. But that is a potential concern, because if he has one of those games where he goes like 0 for 8 like he did in Dallas, they got kind of bailed out of that situation by Ish coming in and knocking down a couple threes.
But don't you have a short hook if that's the case?
Yeah.
And you look at a Terrence Ross, a TJ Warren if he's not sick anymore, whatever's going on.
Well, Landry Shamet, if you want to go a little smaller.
Yeah, I feel like Monty has to have that short hook with him, because you can't suffer through an 0 for 7, because that could very well be the difference in one of these games, because these teams are fairly evenly matched, especially when you consider the Clippers have the bench advantage. So if you give up that shooting, I think you're going to have to move quick off that.
I do think the bench advantage is a little negated by, obviously, like we've talked about, being able to stagger the starters more, make sure you have one or two of that core four on the court at all times. But yeah, they definitely have that bench advantage. For me, my biggest concern is not whether they'll get enough bench production. It's whether Monty will be able to pull the right strings, because he does have a lot of options, and a lot of them are either offensive based or defensive based. Like Torrey Craig is one of the few that can do both. Josh Okogie, his shooting can be suspect. Terrence Ross, we know that defensively he's probably going to get targeted a little bit.
And he hasn't met a shot that he doesn't like.
Yes, well. And Landry, he hustles his ass off defensively, but sometimes when those shots aren't falling, it can be rough to keep him out there. Vince, what do you have any concern with this matchup? Anything specific that jumps out?
I think you hit on a bunch of things that are very pertinent. The Suns bench, and going back to Josh Okogie, what happens if you're not hitting? And Greg, you nailed it. I mean, that Monty Williams has shown the propensity. Hey, if it's not falling, we're going to go somewhere else. And when you have that many options of guys, there's no reason to allow a player who's not a key offensive contributor to shoot you out of a playoff game. So hopefully Monty doesn't have to deal with it. Hopefully everybody just comes in and hits a high percentage of their shots. But, that's got to be a concern. I think the Clippers have a distinct bench advantage in this series.
Sam, not to put you on the spot, but if you do see Josh Okogie struggle, who would you like to see be that guy that Monty turns to?
That is tough. It depends. If it's purely for a shooting thing, I think Terrence Ross might be a guy, but the defense is such an issue, guys. I'm not even going to lie. It might be Torrey Craig at first. Credit Torrey Craig. I think he's shooting 40% on catch and shoot threes this year, or close to 40% in general, maybe even better on just the catch and shoots. But he has been good enough to maybe earn reps in those situations.
Yeah, he's a guy that the percentages are better than his reputation is, I feel like, especially for this season. And the last full season he was in a Suns jersey, he shot the ball pretty well, but it always felt a little questionable because sometimes he would hesitate or he would turn down shots. I feel like in a playoff series, he's just got to shoot that thing with confidence. Like we know Josh Okogie will. They both have to kind of weather the storms, I think. If they have a game where they're 0 for 3, 0 for 4, or Josh gets pulled or whatever, I think they need to keep shooting through it, because the worst thing you can do is, turn in something like we saw from Campaign last year, where it just felt like he couldn't do much of anything at all because he didn't have the confidence. One last thing before we ask for predictions here. What do you feel about Deandre Ayton's role in this series? Because we've seen the number of shot attempts go down with Kevin Durant pretty significantly. They've been higher quality looks, but they've utilized his gravity a little bit more and his, mid-range touches a little bit less. And against the Clippers, you've got Zubac, who's a very good defender in drop coverage. And then you've got the option where they go small ball. Sam, do you feel like if they go small, this is a series where DA can establish himself, or do you counter with the nuclear option and throw KD at the 5?
Well, that's exactly what I was going to say, Gerald. It's a great option for Monty to have, to maybe just throw KD in there. Look, I think DA can handle the challenge if they go small. I think it's interesting with the Clippers at the same time that they've gone away from their original small ball identity when they brought in Mason Plumlee, and DA's role might be fairly traditional in this series in terms of just matching their physicality. Both of those guys are really strong. Both of them can rebound the ball well. Another thing I'm looking out for in DA that I touched on in our preview as well is I'd like him to be aggressive defensively, and this is more on Monty than him. But in terms of maybe playing up a little bit higher in the pick and roll coverage, maybe put some pressure on Kawhi and really try and take away his space, force him into more of a playmaker, get the ball out of his hands a little bit. Because if PG's not there, it would be great to force guys like Russell Westbrook, Norm Powell, yada, yada, to have to make more decisions with the ball in their hands where they're not necessarily as comfortable. And I think DA is capable of doing that. I think he's capable of trapping, hedging, doing all that stuff and shuffling his feet a little bit. But I would like to see more of it because we haven't seen so much.
Yeah, having another 7-footer behind him for that secondary rim protection, like I'm sure all of us on all of our podcasts have talked about at some point, is a nice luxury to have.
Yeah, I feel like DA is one of these guys that as they play more minutes, he's going to just get more comfortable. I know that screams lazy analysis, but I think he's the guy out of everybody that has to adjust more with Kevin Durant in there, just simply because I think he's going to get easier looks, but it's going to come fewer like we've seen. Mm-hmm. So he has to be ready when he's called upon, and we know that sometimes his focus ebbs and flows at times. He needs to be locked in, because if he's only going to get 9 shots and he's going to have to contribute defensively to make an impact, you're going to need him 100% locked in there.
Yeah, if you go back to the experience with Deandre Ayton 2 years ago in the finals run against that Clippers team and a guy he did match up against in Zubats, he had a really good series. And, you know, a lot of it, your analysis is right. His role has changed. And it sounds weird to say it, but it's bordering on anything that DA gives you in this series offensively is almost gravy.
Yeah.
Because now you've got Kevin Durant into the mix. So concentrate on rebounding and defense. And if you can do that, like I said, and take those higher quality shots and knock them down, we know he's still got elite touch for a big man from 15 feet in. So, I don't think there's a ton of offensive pressure on DA in the series.
No, he really has become the fourth option, you know, and that's probably where he can thrive, because there isn't that pressure on him now.
Right. And it was encouraging to hear him acknowledge that his role has changed, but he is focused on doing the little things, because he knows this is a fantastic chance for them to get back to the finals and compete for a championship again. If you want to read more about the Deandre Ayton question, about, you know, the playoffs and this Clippers matchup, go to gophnx.com. I just wrote about that today. But let's do our predictions now, because I feel like I was just on a Clippers podcast yesterday and we were all in the same territory on this. So I'm curious everybody else's thoughts. Sam, what is this series going to be, and in how many games?
I got to go first, huh? I'm going to go Suns in 6. Which I feel like is a fairly safe bet. I think we're going to lock it up, but you know, they've got some weapons. Like, it's not just about Kawhi. It's about, like, Norm Powell could drop 30 points on you and steal a game somewhere, and they've got talent. So I'm going to go Suns in 6.
Espo?
So obviously, and we didn't talk about it much, but the Paul George question is hanging out there, very much like the Kawhi back in 2021, where it was like, oh, could he come back towards the end of the series? If Paul George comes back, this becomes a much more difficult series, and I think it goes 6 or 7. If he doesn't, I think this is Suns in 5, just because you look at it, they have probably 4 of the top 5 guys in this series without Paul George out there on the court. And I think that gets it done in 5.
Yeah, the Kawhi Leonard cloud in 2021 was definitely out there. Interesting that he missed the whole next season too. So there's a little bit of gamesmanship and playing possum at this point too. I watched a little bit of Paul George's podcast, and he seemed upbeat about it. He seemed like he was making progress, so we'll see. I want to say Suns in 5. I want to be that confident, but I can't remember the last time they clinched the playoff series at home. So you got to go.
It's been a hot minute.
Are you the drama, Vince?
I'd like to experience that personally, but I think Suns in 6. And 6 doesn't mean it's an easy series either. We've seen 6-game grinds over the last 2 playoff runs.
Right. Last year, the first round against the Pelicans was technically 6, and it felt like a full, an 8-game series. I also landed on Suns in 6. I was teetering between 5 or 6, but I do feel like, especially the feeling each other out process, honestly, this could be helpful for the Suns in the long term if it does go like 5 or 6 games as opposed to a sweep, because it gives them more time to learn things about each other, to be put in pressure situations, to have just more sample size time on the court together. Obviously, you would like to close a series as quickly as possible and not mess around with it. But if it does go to 6 games, I feel like that's a silver lining to this whole series. Sam, thank you so much for coming on. Everybody, you can follow Sam at Scooper Hoops on Twitter. You can follow the timeline at the Timeline Pod, I believe. And they just recorded your 301st episode. That's right?
Yeah. Yep, that is correct. Been at it for a little while. So
congratulations.
Very awesome. Most people who are in here know Sam and Mike do fantastic work. So make sure to give their podcast a follow and a listen. Sam, do you have anything else that you would like to plug?
Nope, you totally nailed it. Thank you so much, guys, for bringing me on. It was fun.
Yeah, hit their Patreon up too. Their Patreon,
Yes.
they have that as well. So you can always support another great show. Sam, really appreciate it, man.
Appreciate it, guys.
You know who else we appreciate?
Who's that?
Our friends over at FOCO. They're back now, Gerald, and they provide some of the best sports and entertainment merchandise and products there are out there. Their bobbleheads are next level. I don't know if you're a bobblehead connoisseur at all, but they gave us and they sent over in our commish studio one of the coolest Diamondbacks bobbleheads I have ever seen. You can check it out at their website. They've got officially licensed gear for all the sports out there, all your fandom. And we decorate a lot of our studio with stuff from them, as you can tell when you look around here. So FOCO always has our back for Arizona sports, and they have yours too. Get the best gear around by using the link in our description. And for all those non-presale items, you can use the promo code PHNX, and you're going to get 10% off. That's right. You're going to save 10% just for being a friend of the program. And also want to talk to you about our friends over at BetMGM, the new sportsbook partner here with PHNX. So happy to have them included. They are the king of sportsbooks, and they've got some great deals for you. And if you use the promo code PHNX when you sign up, you're going to get $200 in bonus bets on your first wager with BetMGM. Just download the app, sign up using that code, place a pregame moneyline wager in the amount of at least $10 on any market standard odds price, and you will receive $200 in bonus bets instantly, regardless of the outcome of your wager when you use that promo code PHNX. Plus, join us at the BetMGM Sportsbook at State Farm Stadium for all Suns away playoff games. Our PHNX Suns watch parties will be there, presented by Neutral. Yeah, that's the one with the umlaut in the name. And we'll feature food and drink specials, PHNX giveaways, and BetMGM deposit match. So make sure to join us there. And also, we're working on some special bets as well that maybe you'll be able to take advantage of. That's Game 3, April 20th at 6 p.m., as we just found out. Now here's Shane to read you the disclaimer really, really quickly.
Disclaimer, 21 plus to wager. Visit BetMGM.com for terms and conditions. U.S. promotional offers not available in Washington, D.C., Mississippi, Nevada, New York, and Ontario. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Colorado, D.C., Illinois, Indiana, Louisiana, Maryland, Mississippi, New Jersey, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Tennessee, Virginia, West Virginia, Wyoming. Call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369, New York. Call 1-800-NEXT-STEP, Arizona. 1-800-522-4700, Kansas, Nevada. 1-800-327-5050, Massachusetts. 1-800-BETS-OFF, Iowa. 1-800-270-7117 for confidential help, Michigan.
Let me just say this. I miss Lindsay because I hate reading the ads. I butcher them constantly. But a man who doesn't butcher the ads when he has to read them on the Suns broadcast, Kevin Ray joining us. K-Ray, how are you?
How we doing, gentlemen?
Doing great.
K-Ray brought his shoe game with him. Look at that.
His shoe game.
You know, it's playoff time.
Yeah, he's ready.
He's wearing the shorts too. He brought the calf game. I'm a little sensitive now too. So,
or was it sure? Lindsay didn't say there was a dress code. So
I mean, look how we're dressed.
We're above 80, so I'm taking the Tim Kempton approach to to the temperatures. At least I'm wearing socks today though. So.
That's true. No loafers without the socks. That's fair. Well, thanks for joining us out here, K-Ray. We've obviously been talking about the Suns and Clippers out here, and I just want to get your initial thoughts on this series. When you look at this, how you feeling about things for the Suns?
Yeah, I feel good in the sense that in terms of a first-round opponent, you can probably say pretty positively it's probably as good a draw as the Suns could have gotten. Mm-hmm. Now, I've gone back and forth, and EJ and I talked about it a little bit off the air, in that if you're going to face Golden State, there's a part of me that would prefer to get them out of the way in the first round because Wiggins has been out for so long. And yes, he's coming back, but to think that Andrew Wiggins, even within the first 3 games, is going to be Andrew Wiggins of a year ago is naive. But that being said, they still got those other dudes, and the Splash Brothers can be the Splash Brothers pretty quickly in a series. So I like the fact that the Suns can also start kind of creating and building momentum when you consider 8 games and the body of work that we've got there with Kevin Durant. I feel like we've yet to see the best basketball.
Yeah. So we knew that the series was going to start on Sunday, but we did just get the schedule for all the games here. And I know it really doesn't matter. We knew when, that it was going to be home for 2 on the road. But when you look at this schedule, you get Sunday at 5 p.m., Tuesday at 7. We're basically going every other night. How are you guys feeling with how the thing shook out from the schedule was?
I'm glad they finally released the damn schedule because we were waiting for the Lakers to get their shit figured out so we could finally know when we're going to play. I'm looking at, so I think the Suns Clippers series, and there was one other series, it was the non-Warriors, non-Lakers series, that they don't get 2 days of rest at any point between games 1 and 4. I think we're the only ones. And it's weird because you look at the games 3 and 4, one is at 7:30, and then the other one is at like 12:30.
Right.
So it's really not even a full day, like the 2 days in between that you would normally get. It's basically like a day and a half kind of. So that game 4 might be a little bit rougher than what we're used to seeing, and not just because it's a day game and those are automatically harder to prepare for, but it's good for me because my fiance's birthday is on Sunday, so I'll be back from LA on time.
Gerald for the win.
Yeah, I'm glad we put in that request with Adam Silver, and he came through. I wish that day game was Sunday, honestly, because you come off the rest. Really playing at 12:30 isn't going to be as big of a deal, but you put it on that Saturday, to your point, that day and a half. I mean, does that concern you, K-Ray, at all?
I mean, to some degree, look, we experienced this last year. If you recall, we did not get a lot of like extra days rest when the playoffs started last year, and we all saw the price that the Suns paid as a result of that. I think a couple of factors. The one benefit is they're not having to leave the time zone, so you're staying in the time zone, which at least for those first few games for a few days can be significant. But I'm not surprised. I fully expected us to be the Sunday evening game, like knowing that LA was in, knowing that Golden State is in. Those are your TV jewels, when it comes to trying to draw the primetime audience. I thought that maybe we would do a Friday, Sunday for games 3 and 4, but I'm not too stunned that they, placed it Thursday and Saturday. But to your point, it's interesting. You got a 7:30 tip-off on Thursday, 12:30 on Saturday, and it is kind of a short turnaround. Yeah. And game 4, it can be one of those pivotal swing games. So we'll see.
I think both teams are playing by the same schedule. And at this point of the year, it seems like we've had no basketball for a year and a half. It's been a handful of days. So I think there's a tendency to overanalyze a little bit. Even after that Saturday game, two days on the back end of that for extra rest. And K-Ray brings up a great point. It's an hour flight. Yeah. And they're not dragging their own bags and walking to LA and back and forth. So roll it out there. Let's see what happens.
Yeah, I mean, the hotel accommodations aren't too bad in LA.
Yeah. They should be okay.
As well, so I think it'll be all right. One of the biggest matchups in this series, obviously, is going to be Kevin Durant versus Kawhi Leonard. You look at their stats this season; they were 2 of the best when they actually played, and very similar statistic-wise. When you look at this matchup, and Vince, we can start with you. What do you think is the X factor in these two guys going up against each other, and who do you think will wind up having the bigger impact on the series?
Kawhi and KD?
Kawhi and KD,
yeah. I don't know who's going to have the biggest impact. Kawhi, one of the things that shocks me about Kawhi Leonard from my viewpoint when I get to watch him play, and K-Ray, you're up close too. You're right behind me. You don't think of Kawhi Leonard as a big, wide guy. He is put together, and that's the one thing that stands out to me.
I enjoyed that humble brag, by the way, mentioning that Kevin sits behind you.
Look, I feel bad.
You sit behind me, K-Ray.
K-Ray's got to look at the back of my head for 2.5 hours. I think you have to consider the recent injury history for Kawhi. As you do with KD. Now, Kawhi's obviously a little bit more integrated into what his team is doing. Yeah. I expect both of these guys. I mean, these are 2 of the best players in the world. I expect them both to show up. I don't know if there's a tangible advantage to be had by one or the other. This series, to me, is going to come down to the complementary pieces.
Yeah, I mean, we talked to Kevin Durant today about that Kawhi matchup, and I think he looks forward to this type of thing. He was saying it's always a privilege to go out there and play against Hall of Fame talent like Kawhi, like Russ. And he's looking forward to that because they have had many playoff clashes in the past, but most of them near the beginning of Kawhi's career were before he was the Claw. He was a role player for the Spurs, a very good one. And then near the last kind of couple of years, like the Toronto series, KD was hurt for all but like 12 minutes of that series. So it's been multiple years since these two have been able to meet in the playoffs and have that type of battle. And I think he on a new team for this new fan base that he already feels bad about, you know, the ankle turn and missing that time. I think he's very much looking forward to this type of high octane matchup. Obviously, a series goes way beyond the two best players going head to head, but it is something that's going to be fun to watch because Kawhi has really turned it on offensively the last couple of months after sort of trying to find himself early in the season after all the time he's missed. But defensively, I don't know if he's that defensive player of the year anymore. And KD just had one of the most efficient shooting seasons we've ever seen. So it should be fun.
Yeah. And I think just to echo what Benny said, I do think that when you look at these two players, in many ways, they will likely cancel each other out just in terms of their impact and probably on both ends of the floor. So it will be the others. And in this case, you know, the others for the Suns is that dude, and that dude is number one, Devin Booker. We know and we have seen historically for a guy that didn't make it to the playoffs the first few years of his career, he is making up for lost time. And when you look at those 8 games when he is on the floor with KD, the numbers are just staggering. And I think these guys are also learning too how to play off KD on the defensive end. And I think they're even surprised and stunned at like, all we knew about was the offensive side. We forgot how much room this guy can cover defensively. So, you bring up a great point with Kawhi's defense, still very solid, but he doesn't strike me. And again, only watching him a few games, he doesn't strike me as that guy like, oh geez, Kawhi's on him. Like the oxygen is out of the room and you're not going to be able to breathe. I don't feel like that. Still very good, but not the Kawhi that we saw 4 or 5 years ago.
How crazy is it that we're sitting now referring to Devin Booker as one of the others, with KD being the star focal point in a series like this? I mean, for so long we talked about, and I don't like the reference, but the Robin to Devin Booker's Batman, and now he doesn't have to carry as much of the load with KD. It's crazy to me that we're here now.
Yeah, I mean, if you just go back a few years when the subject of super teams came up in Phoenix, and Devin Booker was asked the question, and I think people were focusing on Karl Anthony Towns and D'Angelo Russell as maybe the ingredients of the super team.
God bless.
But Devin Booker was like very level-headed about it and said, "Yeah, I'd like to be part of a super team. I want them to come to me." And here we are.
I guess you can speak things into existence.
Yes, you can. And you want to talk about a guy who's probably feeling really confident in terms of, Devin Booker's a consummate pro. We all know this, the way he attacks his craft. But to have, that, level of, fortification, if you will, Kevin Durant is on your team and you're basically the second option as one of the most devastating scorers in the league. It's got to feel just amazing for him going into this postseason.
It's exciting for us too to be able to watch because we've seen what Book has been able to do against primary defenders for pretty much the entire season. He just turned in a career scoring high this season, and that was only with KD out there alongside him for 8 games. You go back to the start of March, he was averaging like 32 points a game to close the season, and he's going to be the one that's getting the second best defender now. It almost feels unfair, and there are very few teams in the NBA that are going to be able to have the 1-2 wing tandem to make life tough for both Kevin Durant and Devin Booker and worry about Chris Paul and DA in pick and roll. Like that is brutal to deal with. And I'm excited because I really do feel like people are sleeping on Book a little bit because we're all talking about KD and Kawhi in this matchup, and we're talking about Kevin Durant leading the Suns to the promised land. I feel like it wouldn't surprise me if Book led the team in scoring just because he's been on an absolute tear recently and because he's going to have more favorable openings than I think he's ever had in his career.
Yeah, and as those people you refer to do that with Book, he's sitting there with that wry smile of his, say, "Okay, go ahead." But it's like Vinny said, that one of the beautiful things about Book is he's never gotten caught up in who's Batman, who's Robin, who's getting, and I think even more so with this collective, because he knows that KD plays the game the right way. He knows that Chris plays the game the right way. These are all 3 stars, superstars, who will always be selfless in terms of like, okay, you're bringing the double to me. I'm not going to try and carve my way through this. I'm going to, continue to draw them. I'll kick it. And that's why we saw Chris Paul with all those open threes, like the last 4 or 5 games. Chris, when he joined us on the postgame show that one night, the way he was like, surprised me. He's like, been playing for 18 years and I've never had guys double off me the way that I've had guys double off me the last 3 or 4 games. But that's the new world that he lives in.
Yeah, must be nice. Gerald, you brought up an interesting question in terms of who, with Paul George out, who guards Devin Booker?
That's the thing is I was talking to a couple Clippers guys on their podcast yesterday, and they were sort of wondering the same thing because in that 2021 series, Terrence Mann came in and they obviously had Patrick Beverly, but Terrence Mann was the other guy who came in, and he's done a good job of making life a little bit more challenging for Book in the past, and B, cutting them to death on the offensive end. He's had some really high scoring games against the Suns, but lately his minutes have kind of been phased out. Marcus Morris missed the last 2 games of the season with the back spasm thing, but he had kind of been phased out of the rotation in favor of Nick Batum. And I'm looking at all these guys and I'm like, they're not going to be able to hang with Book. Like, they have one very good wing defender in Kawhi, and the rest are question marks. Like Russ, you're going to target him. Norman Powell had the reputation of being a good defender when he got traded to the Clippers. And I was talking to them and they were saying, yeah, he's been awful on defense. So he's another guy that they're going to target. So unless you're confident in giving Terrence Mann minutes, I don't know who they're going to put on him, because like maybe Eric Gordon, because he can stand his ground a little bit, but he's older and I just don't see it. Book might have a field day with this matchup because the Clippers are only the 17th ranked defense this season. They haven't been good.
Yeah, and I did confirm that if the Bulls do get knocked out, that Pat Bev can't sign with the Clippers, so there's no concern there for Suns fans.
He could show up and shove somebody in the back.
True,
right?
True. He could show up as a concessionaire and run out on the floor. But
as always, watch your back.
Exactly. But it will be interesting. Look, Ty Lue, I've got all the respect in the world for Ty Lue and his ability to game plan and make adjustments. I think that we will see a fair amount of zone from time to time. And the one thing with Ty, he will throw multiple defenses over the course of a game, just trying to keep his opponent and the Suns in particular off balance as much as possible. But that's why when you've got 3 of the highest IQ dudes in the league on the floor, it's like, okay, you might get us for 2 or 3 possessions, but if you run that a 4th time, we're going to carve you up. I don't know. I think it will be a collective. I don't know that you can point to one guy and say he's going to get a sign because the domino effect becomes, okay, then who's on KD, who's rotating off Chris, and are you going to continue to play Zubats in drop coverage? Because there's that other dude, number 22, who when he's hitting that 15-footer, your defense is just absolutely eviscerated.
Yeah. That's the shot they're going to want to give, and it's still a shot that DA has hit 48% of the time this season, which is really good for a center. It's not as good as last year, but it's still really good. They just have too many liabilities that they have to play minutes. Like Russ is 3rd in minutes. He's going to get targeted. You throw Norm Powell out there because you need the bench scoring. He's going to get targeted. Bones Highland, a guy who's been pretty good for them, another liability. And then Mason Plumlee, you throw him out there. He's decent, but he does like 2 or 3 really dumb things every game. And I feel like in a playoff series, that's going to be heightened. It's tough for the Clippers because they have a lot of depth, but they also have a lot of defensive liabilities.
Can we talk about Mason Plumlee for a second?
Yeah, let's do it.
I think it's an amazing transformation that he's this far into his NBA career and he just figured out he's left-handed. Is that not amazing? You watch him shoot the ball and you're like, wow. And it goes in sometimes.
Yeah.
I didn't realize the Plumleys were still in the league. I know Miles is off of gallivanting the world now.
Yes,
So.
I think he's a really good backup center, but I mean that shot is it's not gonna win any beauty contests.
No, it's not bad for if I were to just like totally change up my life choices and go with my left hand, but like
I say that left is far better than his right hand was.
I know he's shooting like free throws like 77% as a left-hander.
Yeah.
I told you these ads aren't going to be good, so I'm just going to transition to this. If you want to kill your hunger and your thirst, you want to defend that, unlike the Clippers are going to be able to defend the Suns' offense, I highly recommend you go over and visit our friends at Circle K. We're really excited to partner with them. They've provided us snacks. We got a whole snack cart in here, gentlemen, that Circle K has provided. It has not helped my diet, but it has helped kill off my hunger for sure. And we want you to go check out Circle K, one of your local area Circle Ks, for the best coffee, beer, snack selection. Oh, and premium gas too. They got pretty good gas there as well. So if you're looking to stock up for Suns playoff games before you go watch K-Ray, or you're out at the arena and listening to Vince and his dulcet tones out there, stop at Circle K. You can find them pretty much on every corner where you are around the valley. Make sure you're not missing out on all this great stuff. Head to circlek.com/store locator to find the Circle K near you. And then want to give a shout out to our friends at OG's Brands, the best scratch-made gummies in the game out here, locally made, and they're going to be out at Buds-A-Palooza, where you can get our new collab shirt with OG's brand. This shirt is live. If you want it, you can get your hands on it. Like I said, at Buds-A-Palooza when you buy your ticket. Join our PHNX crew on Friday, April 14th in downtown Phoenix. We'll be hanging out with the OGs guys, and we'll be doing a special edition of the PHNX OGs Variety Show live from Buds-A-Palooza. If you think this show is fun, you can only imagine how good the Buds-A-Palooza Variety Show is with Derek and the crew that'll be out there. They find a way to have a good time. I'll say that of it. So head out there. You can get the info on Buds-A-Palooza. Check out budsapalooza.com. K-Ray, before you got here, Vince was joking about how he and I met and how I was 15 working on high school football. I met you working on high school football back when I was in college too.
There are a lot of high school connections in this grouping for sure.
I just thought it was fun. I was thinking about that. I just looked at you and I was like, oh yeah, that's how I met K-Ray too, was really bad high school football reporting on cell phones. Really bad cell phones.
I don't think the reporting was bad. I mean, here you are all these years later. And the rare like high school go-getter. Maybe it's changed since I was in high school. We didn't want to do anything in high school. So for you to get involved that early, kudos to you.
I had more gumption back then. I've gotten worse somehow since the high school football reporting days. Well, Kerry, we shared our predictions a little earlier, but what are you looking at in terms of this series? How do you think it plays out?
You know, I was on with Luke the other day on Arizona Sports, and everybody's looking at this matchup as more favorable, and everybody's like, oh, the Suns, should breeze through. And I just said, look, here's the thing. If you learn nothing through the entire regular season, the log jam that is, 2 through 12, I mean, you got two teams that didn't even get into the mix that, if they were fully healthy, might be a different story. I just don't think it's going to be easy for anybody in any of these series. Mm-hmm. So I've kind of wrapped my head around the idea that this is probably going to be a 6-game series. Yeah. That while we talk about some of the challenges that the Clippers have, they've still got Kawhi and Russ. And you were in that room the other day when Monty brought it up, and mm-hmm. I felt this way about Russ too. Like the way people have marginalized, which is the word that Monty used, Russ, a former league MVP, a triple-double machine, and it's just the sole focus of him and the failed experiment in LA. But this dude still gets downhill. Mm-hmm. He still plays 100 miles an hour, puts pressure on your defense. and you throw him in there. Powell, and I love the fact that Norm Powell not only played the other day, but he played really well because we hadn't seen him previously. So that puts our guys, our bench guys specifically, on high alert, knowing what he is capable of doing. But it's not going to be easy. As talented as this Suns team is, they are going to have their hands full and will be challenged at times. So I think we're looking probably at a 6-game series.
Yeah. Easy playoff series don't exist. I mean, Suns have had 6 series over the last 2 years. One of them was easy. And that even there was moments in the 4-game sweep over Denver where it got a little rocky. But
you mean when
yeah, they got still
Jokic's
standing
brother?
curbside hoping somebody will.
yeah, when Jokic's brain broke at the end. But yeah, I mean, it just doesn't exist. This is going to be at least a 6-game series.
Yeah, we've all been in Phoenix long enough. We understand that, that easy is
I mean,
not something we know
got to
real
the
well.
point in 21 where we're like, wow, the Suns are just not going to lose another playoff game. What do they have, 8 straight in the playoffs? It doesn't happen. So,
Well, we talked about playoffs, but there's one thing I want to talk about before we get out of here. And K-Ray, I'll start with you because you guys did a really cool thing with Al McCoy the other night. Most play-by-play guys don't give up the mic for others. You took a back seat to let Al call that second quarter in the game the other night. Obviously, Al is retiring this year. What has he meant to you, and how was it to be able to let him do TV one last time?
Yeah, I mean, first and foremost, not every play-by-play guy gets a chance to have a Hall of Famer sit there. So that was an easy decision. When we first started talking about it, myself, EJ, and Dan Siekman, our longtime boss, I just said, like, whatever he wants to do. Like, I can get completely out of the way, or I can sit there because we do have business. We've got to do the drop-ins and the cards. And I said, just to make his life easier, how about if I just read the cards coming in and out, throw it to him and EJ, and just let him go. And for me, it was the best because I get to be a fan. I mean, I'm watching the game, but it was like I was home or driving on the road, and I get to listen to this guy, and it took me back. And what Al means to me is he's one of the first people that I met when I moved to Arizona. I lived in Flagstaff, worked at a radio station up there, was a sports director, janitor, sales guy, doing all the jobs, but we were a Suns affiliate. And this is when the Suns had training camp, 2 weeks of training camp, if you could believe that.
Yeah, that's changed.
10 days thereabout. And so as a sports director, and Al oversaw the whole broadcast operation. So he reached out to me to introduce himself and to, welcome me to Arizona. And mind you, I'm a kid coming from the Midwest. I grew up, I was a young boy, the Kansas City Kings were there. The Kings left. And so I had no NBA to listen to. And so when I first moved out here and being an affiliate, watching and listening Al. And so I knew what I wanted to do before I arrived, but listening and watching Al, it just accelerated my desire and my goal to be that. And for him to welcome me the way he did and really become a mentor for me and provide a lot of, great intel, resources, and just support, can't say enough. And so we were thrilled to be able to do it. And just the reaction to the fans just made it, so worthwhile.
Vince, you grew up in town listening to Al. What has he meant to you, and what has it been like to work in the building with him?
It's been amazing. Going back to what you guys at Bally Sports did, and just that snippet of the simulcast, which anybody who grew up in Phoenix remembers. Al was the voice on radio and television at the same time. It was a radio broadcast on TV. That's how I grew up. So that was a treat for people like me. To be able to consider myself a coworker with Al McCoy has been amazing. He's somebody I've revered since I'm 8 years old, since my family moved out here. And my favorite Al stories, and we get to talk to him every Wednesday. He comes on the show and he's great every week. But before games, in the hours leading up to the games and everybody's milling around the media room, now Al will just come up and say, "So Vince, what's going on in the radio business?" And I'm like, I got nothing for you, Al. Sorry. And then he'll sit down and he'll tell me what's going on in the radio business because he's still so connected. He's a legend. 51 years, the longest stint ever by a play-by-play voice in any NBA market. It's remarkable. And I mean, if you listen to the games, there's still a lot of zip on that fastball. He's one of a kind.
Do you guys remember the first time you heard Al curse? I'll never forget that moment. Blew my mind. I was like, whoa, all right, that's really cool.
It's like, wow, he's a real person.
He's
one
real.
of us.
Well, guys, I want to thank you both for joining us. Gerald and I truly appreciate it. It's a treat for us to get to sit next to two of the biggest names in the Valley. So it's a pleasure to have you both.
K-Ray, yes.
Oh, come on,
I
Vince.
appreciate you putting me in that mix.
Oh, come on, Vince. Yeah, you got both of you have to deal with Dan and EJ, and you got to take a little credit for yourself.
The biggest names, I thought EJ was.
Well, we appreciate you. We usually just have to deal with Lindsay, so it's nice to have you guys.
Shot across the bow.
Legends
Lindsay's
only.
catching
Vince.
strays.
Legends only.
You can follow K-Ray on Twitter at K-Ray1. Oh wow, I just lost it here. K-Ray One Voice. I want to say sport. K-Ray One Voice. You can watch him on the broadcast through the first round with EJ. You can follow Vince at Vince Marotta. You can hear him mornings on Arizona Sports 98.7 with Dan Bickley and the crew. You can follow Gerald Bourguet at Gerald Bourguet, and you can hear him here with me. For some reason he chose to do this for a career. You can follow me at Espo. You can follow the show at PHNX_Suns. And remember, just because you're playing LA doesn't mean that you're not a good looking team. Beat LA, baby. Oh, hoy, hoy.
Phoenix Metro, Megas in control and he ain't never gonna let go. PHNX though, Lindsey, Gerald, Espo. Saw past the ball, we here to turn up the tempo. Got to understand me, I'll always rep the family.